Karibu. Welcome. Today I am going to try and read through a reparations suggestion for a Reparations Act that I've been working on for a couple of weeks. Reparations, ever since the congressional hearing, I started catching a lot of feelings about why haven't we talked about this sooner? What reparations really means? Even as I have been practicing yoga and I do my specific pose for Mayat, and Mayat is all about truth, order, justice, and I started researching and looking up the word reciprocity. And reciprocity is real. I talk to friends and family all the time about what we call the boomerang, and how we were taught as young kids that, if you do something, it's going to come back. That's the boomerang. Well, as I have started moving further and further off grid, connecting with nature, I can so appreciate our beautiful land, and imagine what it must have been like before some of the very horrible ills came to it. So, yeah, reparations is due because reciprocity is real. And if we don't try to heal and repair some things that were done and start getting back to loving and taking care of our beautiful land called America, that reciprocity is not going to be so good. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking about the background of how I came to do this. I think it's more important that I put this out there. Now, again, if you know anything about me, I'm just a regular middle-aged person. I am by profession an IT professional, so I'm not a political science person, philosophy professional, or even a teacher. But it has been in my spirit to put something like this out here as students and other people are searching. What is reparations? Do we really need it? Why we need it? What do we do? What kind of reparations? What a value needs to come about in these reparations? So this is out there. Like I said, I am not an English teacher, a history teacher, so don't think this is grammatically correct or historically matching up with some of the other stuff that's out there. This is just out there because this is some of my research, my seeking, and some of the stuff that I was able to put in print. Again, open, willing to share this with anybody out there who can come up with something better. I guess at the end of this, I make a plea. I would love to get a formal draft, legalized, and everything, so that we can help other people see what needs to be done, how it can be done. A lot of the how is not in here. It's just really high level. So here I go. This is how my draft goes, and you'll probably be seeing the slides, and I'm reading from the actual draft that I posted to my Oshita Moore website, or it's a blog actually, so I will put that blog link in this recording, not in the recording, but where I recorded, whether it be YouTube or out to a teaching platform. Okay, I'm calling my reparations draft the Continental, Indigenous, Afro-American Reparations Act. For short, it is Sierra. And it is a list of collective demands for healing and repair. What is Sierra? A great injustice was instituted upon the melanated indigenous persons of America when groups of European colonists invaded the continental lands of what is now called North, Central, and South America. To heal the wrongs committed, both the land and generations of persons negatively impacted must receive reparations. Why Sierra? Without justly providing reparations, continental America will never be at balance again. Without reparations, America will continue down a path of chaos and toxic destruction. Reciprocity is due, and it is better to provide reparations than allow the universal natural principles to balance our lands by force. Who must get reparations? Before European colonists invaded the lands of continental America, a diverse group of highly melanated Americans inhabited the lands and were wrongfully enslaved by the colonists. For instance, number one on this, the ancient indigenous Afro-Americans. There is evidence that communities of highly melanated indigenous persons lived on the continent at the same time, if not earlier, than the ancient civilizations of Africa. However, no one has any kind of artifacts that show how they got here. And I'm serious. There are artifacts that look just like ancient Egyptian Kemetic artifacts, but they're here in continental America. A second group, the Olmecs. And I just returned from Mexico City not too long ago where I saw two of the giant Olmec heads. They're real, okay? Africans from the Mali Empire came to the Americas through the Gulf of Mexico and created Mesoamerican societies. The Olmecs are thought to be one of the very first with evidence of Mesoamerican civilizations. Thirdly, Afro-Native Americans. It's pretty much accepted that Asians migrated through the continent and became what are called today Native Americans. However, these Asian Native Americans mixed with the ancient indigenous Afro-Americans, and the dark-skinned Native Americans were then later classified as African slaves by the colonists. I have relatives who fall into this category. The light-skinned brother was supposed to be one of my great uncles. He's on the Native American rolls, but the dark-skinned sister, his dark-skinned sister, was classified as an African slave, or she couldn't get on the rolls because she was too dark, is basically it. So, or none of that makes any sense, but it is what happened, and that's why we have to stop dealing with situations that don't make sense and start seeing things for what they are. A fourth group is the Moors and the Blackamoors. From the 7th through the 15th century, generations of children were born in the Americas of Afro-Arab Moor explorers. And I mean, those Afro-Arab Moor explorers were everywhere, all throughout the world, not just the Americas, but there were children that, came from that legacy, and we can't ignore that. We are, and I say I am, as an indigenous Afro-American, I'm a part of all of the people that I'm missing here. Fifthly, the African POWs. This is, the West African prisoners of war who were kidnapped and sold and brought here from West Africa by force by Europeans as slaves. The POWs mixed with the ancient indigenous African Americans, the Olmecs, mostly the Olmecs. They were around the Mexico and Central America area. Some of them did push up to North America, but and then they mixed as well, these African POWs, with Native Americans, Moors, Blackamoors, and therefore they should be pretty much embraced as indigenous Afro-Americans now, okay? Of all those, groups, and there's more groups. This is just a group that I have been seeking out to get more information on, so I know a little bit about. All of in this group should be considered indigenous Afro-Americans now, no matter how they've mixed, okay? Some people will argue, if you didn't come from West Africa, you don't deserve reparations. That's not true. We've all mixed, okay? And I can get into another recording about the way you can tell who's got the bloodline. And I'll mention a little bit more when I start talking about matriarchy in this recording. But let me get into the 7 key platforms for Sierra. Number 1, education. A lot of people think that number 1 should be getting a check. Well, I'm talking about this act being a sustainable reparations. Okay? If we don't start educating our young now, they're never going to really understand what reparations is, why they need reparations, how it's going to heal the land. So in my perspective or my narrative, education is very important. We need an education package where all Sierra schools will be built and taught from an indigenous Afro-American perspective. We need Sierra school buildings that will be constructed using per-Ankh architecture. And I can get into another recording. Look it up. Per-Ankh architecture is a balancing architecture. You need to, seek that out. The school should provide education for ages 3 through 23. Some people say 3 is too young. It's not for indigenous Afro-Americans. In fact, 2 is really not too young, but they definitely need to be potty trained before, they become the responsibility of a teacher. Believe me, I've done substitute teaching, and kids that are not potty trained don't belong in school. So being that indigenous Afro-Americans start walking before age 1, I know we can be potty trained before age 2. So yeah, send them to school as soon as they're potty trained is what I say. These schools should have degrees of higher learning that will be offered through the Sierra education system. And I want to note as some suggestions for Sierra curriculum is that every student will be taught to excel in reading. And not only to excel in reading, but we need to get back. And I say back because I've researched this and learned we knew how to read. And I say we, ancient indigenous Afro-Americans, we knew how to read from right to left and left to right. Okay? I've tried it. You should try it. Try writing and reading from right to left and left to right. It does things to your brains that just is so freeing. And so, we've got a lot of problems with brain health now. It's probably because we're reading and writing in the wrong direction. We are not the same. I'm sorry. We may have blood that looks like it's the same color, but we are different people. We African Americans have been thought to even be more different than the modern African. Our DNA is that different. And, with all the DNA instructions and details, 5 or 6 differences may not seem like a lot, but it does. It does make a difference. Students need to learn indigenous languages and cultures. To speak a language of the colonists, it does something to us, and I can talk about that in a different recording. But we need to learn our indigenous languages. It really was a more spiritual, soul nourishing language. I've been learning Kiswahili, and just learning Kiswahili has done wonders for my meditation and my speaking into the universe. You need to seek that out too. The history needs to include ancient indigenous artifacts, literature, folk tales, and truths about colonizations. Okay, and some of the history books and history that the children are learning today, it doesn't want to go into some of the truths of colonizations because it's a sad truth. It's a hateful, sad, destructive truth. So they just leave it out, and that's not going to get us anywhere. Okay. Philosophy and rhetoric should be taught from the perspective of ancient African cosmology. Math will be taught using rhythmic principles alongside music and symbolic expression. That's another thing that some of the best educators have found about our children is that we can learn almost anything if you associate it with rhythm. We are a rhythmic and vibrating people. So, all of those parents out there who have kids who need tutoring in math and science because they think it's too hard, it's not hard for our children. They are just needing to learn it in a rhythmic or put rhythm to it. If you can create a dance or a song or some kind of movements to that stuff, we get it down packed, no problem. Now, we might look kind of strange using that when it comes time to take the test, but you can't worry about that. The kids can get it. Okay? Science needs to be centered around nature and the universe. Um, Again, I come from a science and engineering background, and a lot of things that they consider facts are nothing but a bunch of hypotheses and theory. Okay, so we need to get back to evidence, and there's nothing better than evidence in nature and universe. You can see it, you can, all your senses detect it, and stop worrying about somebody else's thoughts of theories, and they might have been drunk or high and they came up with something and now we think it's true. Don't do that. The education system needs to teach respect for earth and all of nature. Okay, that should be a core ethic, is respect for earth and all of nature. Again, I am a big fan and practicing person of yoga and meditation. That's for another recording where I can talk about how that has helped in my healing. But that needs to be that needs to go alongside with our fitness and athletic options. And also note, in fitness and athletic classes, they're too competitive right now. And the way I think the schools are offering options, that goes a long ways with creating something else. So we need to be careful that in our education systems, we're not forcing overly competitive students to do things. The curriculum needs to include psychology that will focus on mentalism and the 7 principles of Tahuti. If you don't know the 7 principles of Tahuti, look that up. Mentalism is key. It's primary. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to get our bodies right. It will not matter if your mind is not right. So get the children understanding now. They've got to get their mentalism right. Sociology should teach us the importance of sovereignty and freedom for the land. Woo. Okay, so that's a lot for the education curriculum. I know we can expand on it. It would be great if I could get some master educators out there to just formalize all of that to help someone, create some really good indigenous Afro-American perspective and focused education for our kids. Healthcare. You got all of these presidential candidates talking about healthcare. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the Afro-American only needs holistic healing practices, okay? Artificial treatments do us no good. It may work for other people, but it does not do us any good. So in reparations, we need a healthcare platform that focuses on holistic healing practices. We need to get knowledge-based information so that we can heal ourselves. Yes, I'm talking about the food and the herbs and all of the practices, everything from massages to Reiki. Yes, we need to get that kind of knowledge-based information into our healthcare platforms. And of course, dietary and nutritional choice support should be very high on that. If our food is our medicine, is the bottom line. Our food is our medicine. So let me move on to housing. We need community housing is what we need. We need housing that is safe and adequate for every family. Okay? Safe, nothing that's crumbling, falling apart, has bad wiring. That's safe. And of course, adequate. Kids need room. Kids need space. And so, I'm into the tiny home movement right now, but kids need space. It's because I don't have kids at home anymore. I can do tiny homes. They need adequate housing. The support, the reparations money. If we do have people that are part of our indigenous Afro-American community that don't want to stay in a reparations community. They cannot use their reparations outside housing communities. Okay, we got to make sure our money stays with us, our resources stay with us. Those communities need to be planned following per Ankh. Procedures, our planning. Like I said, per Ankh is designed to keep everything balanced. And like I said, that's for another expanded recording. Our community should not be policed. Okay, policing is a colonist construct. You know, there are modern African communities today that do not have police, and they have not broken out into some kind of anarchical um, chaos. Okay, so our communities do not need to be the police, and they should be led by matriarchal governorships. Okay, matriarchal governorships. Matriarchy does not mean woman led, woman run. Matriarchy has a lot to do with nurturing principles and practices. It can be practiced by a feminine or a male principle, but those practices are more nurturing and, of course, motherly. Nothing wrong with fatherly, but motherly led practices are totally different. Every community will have its own health services, multi-level educational systems, meaning everything from what they call kindergarten up to college. They should have independently secured utilities for power, water, and waste. Every community should have a community garden. Okay? Markets for trade, which will be led by the matriarchs. Protective security, which will be led by community warriors, and labor representation. Community should have all of that. And moving next into another key is labor organization. Any and all persons that are a part of a Sierra community will be provided with free union representation funded by the Reparations Act. Now, growing up in the South, I never really understand how important collaborative bargaining is. I've worked in management and I never thought it was necessary, but the longer you stay in corporate America, you'll see HR is not there for you. It's for corporate, okay? And the people must have collective bargaining in order to be treated decently in any kind of business. So that's why this is an important key. The fifth key is training. Training is for adults, okay? Every community adult will be offered the opportunity to complete an occupational training program no matter age or ability. The training programs must focus on providing skills to participants that provide them a means to be sovereign and stay sovereign, okay? Training programs must encourage healthy lifestyles, respect for nature, and be taught at the level the participant is needing. And I say the level the participant is needing because we kind of learn at different ages and stages, so we need to consider that. It will also provide Queen Mother rites of passage that will not be just limited to feminine principles. Male principles can go through a Queen Mother rites of passage, and they'll also be able to get their matriarch governing certifications, and I'll get into why that's needed when we talk about funding. But let me get on into the sixth key. This is the one that everybody wants to know about. Everybody wants to focus on. Somebody wants to get a check, okay? I call it ancestral annuities, okay? Because inside each indigenous Afro-American runs the blood of an ancestor that was forced to work and do other labors without fair pay, if any. So if anybody asks you why we should get a check, it's because our ancestors did not get paid for all the work they did that so many people are profiting from right now. So that reciprocity is due, okay? for continental Americans to heal the evils of slavery on our lands, the repair unjust abusive labor practices, annuities must be paid to living generations of the indigenous Afro-American. This is the only way to satisfy reciprocity that I can think of right now. Therefore, annuities in the form of currency will be distributed to Sierra community members. And here's some examples, okay? To be a Sierra annuity recipient, a community member must be an adult matriarch, okay? We're only going to get this money to the matriarchs. We can't just be writing checks to everybody. It could be more detrimental than beneficial, believe me, because some people don't know how to handle money, okay? If you're a non-matriarch in the community, you will get your annuity allotment through your guardian matriarch, okay? Who are the matriarchs? You know who the matriarchs are. You know, who is the very person, the oldest person in your family that you can trust to handle this, to make sure everybody gets taken care of. Every family has one. If you don't have one in your family, you need to send somebody to get trained and create these communities of people with matriarchs, okay? There's no excuse. Nobody should just be getting a check with no kind of training on how to use that, to be sovereign, to stay sovereign. You know, you're just blowing it on whatever, and you're not even thinking about your future generations. No, that's not happening. We've been set up like that in the past. Let's not do that, okay? Matriarchs, again, like I said, will have to complete either a Queen Mother Rites of Passage or some kind of governorship certification to manage the annuity allotments. And in that, yes, they're going to understand why it's so important that they distribute the money to get sovereign, stay sovereign, and make sure future generations have the option to do the same. Okay? The allotments will be paid to matriarchs in the form of either cryptocurrency or gold. U.S. dollars don't have the value. I'm telling you now. Don't start taking U.S. dollars. They'll start getting that back. It's ridiculous. And then 90% of all Sierra allotments must be used within Sierra communities, except for very rare pre-approved situations. So if you just got to have that brand new Cadillac, you better find it in your 10% of your allotment to do that. Otherwise, you're going to mess up the whole system for yourself. But 90% of it needs to be used within the community. So key 7 is sovereignty. Okay? This is really big, and I'm glad it's number 7. But Sierra communities must be set up across continental America. In most cases, the community should be land that has not already been spoiled by commercial and industrialization. When land is identified as good for a Sierra community, the jurisdictional government of that land will use eminent domain to release the land, free the land. There will be no limit to the number of Sierra communities that will be set up across the continent. Now, I know this is kind of sounding like Indian reservations. Well, in the way it is, but we got to take that government control out, the limitations of where they can be. We got to take all that away out of a Sierra community. Each Sierra planned and operational community will be privately reserved. No policing authority will be allowed to enter for any reason, rationale that violates supreme universal natural law. Okay? We don't need the police in there. We're taking policing out of our communities. It is advised all Sierra community members live, work, and go to school on Sierra land. However, if any Sierra community member is accused of a crime in a local, federal, state court, that member must be given the opportunity to be judged by community matriarchs. Okay? We can get into that later. Sierra communities will be secured and protected by Sierra members of the indigenous African warriors. Okay? The warriors will be a role and a responsibility. We have people for that. We have people who have been called to do that kind of work. That should be no problem. So, question, how will Sierra be funded? I have a couple of suggestions here, okay? The biggest one is corporate share, and I've talked about that. Every last business corporation on continental America, most and almost all of them have been created and are prosperous due to the privilege of the past ills of slavery. Okay, it's gonna be hard for me to find any corporation out there that's not been profiting based on that, even though it happened. I don't care if it was 400 years ago. They're still profiting from that privilege of free labor and the abuse of labors. So in that case, I call it corporate share. Not less than 50% of all grocery receipts from all incorporated entities operating on the continent of America should share not less than 50% of all the grocery receipts. I'm not talking about no net. I'm not talking about after you pay all your expenses. No, gross. Okay. Corporations with 100% share-owned members of Sierra communities will be exempt. So any corporation that is 100% share-owned by indigenous Afro-Americans should be exempt from the corporate share. Now, I know corporations are going to try to do everything they can to get out of this. So a corporate share base will be set up at the activation of the Reparations Act, and the corporation will not be allowed to lower that base thereafter without extensive justification evidence. Okay? Corporations that revert to a sole proprietorship or partnerships will still be classified as Sierra corporate share entities. Okay? If a corporation claims bankruptcy, Sierra will be the first recipient of liquidations, and if the entity reorganizes, they will resume their corporate share responsibilities. If a corporation moves its operations off the continent to try to keep from paying its Sierra corporate share, it will not be allowed to do business on the continent of America or provide any kind of services or interact with any kind of citizens of this continent until it resumes sharing. Okay, so that's the corporate share. I'm going to go back to say funding currency. We will not take currency in any other form than gold or maybe a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. Okay, that's what I suggest. Do not take US dollars. It is something else. I don't need to go there. But here's another way to form the Reparations Act, which I think is very honorable. Income taxes collected on Sierra community members must go to Sierra funding accounts on a quarterly basis. So if I work off or outside of the community at some of these corporations, my income tax that are withheld should go straight into the Reparations Act. Okay? We need to take on that role and responsibility as well. Okay? I don't mind working to help my community. It's the way I see that. Okay? So basically, yes, we've got a lot to do, and reparations, I say, is real. I don't know why anyone would deny, like a former president that was classified as African American, reparations. With reciprocity, it's coming back. And it's better that you try to make an honest and sincere attempt to repair those ills now instead of waiting for the reciprocity that's going to come due. Again, I would absolutely love anyone, group of people that are interested and sincerely wanting to put together a formal document draft to help maybe our politicians, educators, historians, whatever, come up with something that's really going to work. So if you're out there and you can help me with this or you're interested in this, contact me at your earliest convenience at Jumbo, at the email jumbo@connecttonature.club, or contact me directly at deepata@gmail.com. we, to really put together a nice formal document or draft, we're going to need all types of people. So don't think, oh, well, I'm not a political science, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not, a political science person or English history professional. Don't think that you can't help. If you can just bring spiritual, support, anything, I think we should, collaborate and try to do something because this is so needed. I thank you always for listening and being patient with me and my very, uh, what I call, um, what is it? My stuff. It's just my stuff. It's not very artistically, you know, impressive or anything, but hey, we got to start somewhere. Start sharing. Start collaborating. And so my artwork may look very simple and everything, but hey, it is what it is, and I'm sharing and I'm putting it in the universe. Asante, Ashe, thank you so very much.